We're live now. This is Gerald Glassford from Game Source and also the Pop Culture Cosmos, and I'm back with today. I'm with a guest that wrote a detailed outlining a history of a company who had its big rise, big fall, but one that was, well, how shall I say this? One with a very storied history, one that many gamers should already know, one that retro gaming fans always will know, and one that a lot of people that have been interested or have had toys over many, many years will come to know as well. And that's Coleco. I'm today with Antoine Clerc Renaud. He's the author of the official Coleco book, or Coleco, the official book as its title. It's available today. If you want to just look it up on if you do go Google search, you'll find it automatically, but I'm going to give everyone the site right now. If they go to, it is, as I go.
I even have a simpler one. So just if
that's so absolutely go right ahead. What's the
ColecoBook.com.
Oh, there you go, ColecoBook.com.
As simple as that. I managed to get the website, so it was just easy.
It's even because I was going to go through your publisher, but ColecoBook.com makes it much easier. It's an outlining of the great history of the company, and I'm here today again with the author, Antoine Clerc Renaud. It's a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak with us here at Game Source and Pop Culture Cosmos.
Thank you very much for having me, Gerald. I'm really pleased to be here.
The first thing I wanted to ask you, and thank you again, is your background as far as is concerned before coming up with the concept of outlining the history of Coleco.
So I started working on so let me just go back really far away. So I started being passionate about video games in 1991 when I got my first video game console, which was a Game Boy with Tetris.
Oh, nice.
And this is really when it all started. And then I really wanted to work in the industry one way or another. So I ended up studying game design in 2008, between 2008 and 2010 in Paris, in France, where I'm from. And afterwards, I didn't manage to find any work, any job in France, so I immigrated in Canada, in Montreal, where I live actually, where I live currently right now. And I worked for 3 years as a QA tester, and then I really wanted to. I really noticed that I became really even more passionate about retro gaming, about the history of video game, and this is really what I wanted to do. So I just contacted some friends of mine. I started writing for some magazines in France, and I worked also on 3 books on the very first PlayStation, which ended up me founding my publishing company and writing. So my very first book that is just out now, and it's about Coleco. So yeah, there it is in a nutshell.
Well, you said it before. You started your history with video games in 1991. As someone who started his history a few years before that, we'll just start off because I'll be denouncing my age here in a second, probably. What prompted your interest in the ColecoVision? Because as you noted, the ColecoVision at its height. Yes, that's interesting. How did that come to be?
So this is really when I first met Jean-François Dupuis, my co-author on the book, who provided me with all his great research. He started in 1996, and when we met, he told me that he was very passionate about Coleco and the ColecoVision, and so this is where the book project started for me, because for him it started really before, and he really wanted to do something about that, and didn't manage to go through with it, and I really wanted to help him achieving that, and so this is why we we agreed on working on this book together, and so Coleco, for me, it was the company that made the ColecoVision. I really didn't know much about them before writing the book. And then, because Jean-François really managed to transfer his passion to me, I really became
It was an interesting search, I guess. You
yeah,
decided
yeah,
to go
and
more into background, correct?
yeah, exactly. I just wanted to do something else than another book on Atari or another book on Nintendo as well. So for me, Coleco was a very good contender for this, and there was no book about it. So we really started from scratch, and it was a very cool experience. And for me, even though I wasn't born when the Coleco was released, because I was born in 1986 and the ColecoVision was released in 1982, it didn't prevent me of from doing really good research or contacting the people who work at Coleco during that time. And because something something I'm really passionate about is the history of video game, simply. So whether it's during my time or before I was born, it doesn't matter. So it's a history that needs to be preserved. So there you go. Yeah, I just wanted to do something that wasn't done before as well.
And recently did a review of the book that I posted on the
And a very
nuherald.com.
good one. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And also as well, yourgamesource.com. I noted that some of the most fascinating parts were not about the ColecoVision. There is a great bit devoted to the ColecoVision. Let's get that out of the way first.
Mm-hmm.
There is a great portion of it. But there were some interesting things that were uncovered, and like you said, you wanted to not just go into the ColecoVision itself, but actually the company as a whole. I know Coleco, like you said, a book like this on Coleco has never been done before. It's never been approached because it's been a company that, even though at its height, rivaled many of its competitors in the toy and gaming industry. And let's put it this way: back when the ColecoVision was out, the gaming systems were still considered much in a way a part of the toy industry as a part of its own entity.
Yeah, you're right.
As someone who owned a ColecoVision, I know I had to go through toy stores and whatnot, and it was sent to the toy section. Even companies and stores that were department stores that were not specialty stores for toys, you would always have to go to the toy section in order to get it. My question to you on that end is, how hard or how difficult was it in the research as far as for especially the early days when it came to the Connecticut Leather Company, as it was originally called?
So this is where I was lucky to work with Jean-François, because he really provided me with all the research he started 20 years ago already, and he collected documents, so catalogs, internal documents as well about Coleco, and this was easier for me to start with those documents, because I could see what kind of toys they made. We even had a document about the history of the company that they released in 1982 for the 50th year anniversary of the company, because it was founded in 1932. And in here they detailed how they began, how Maurice Greenberg immigrated from Russia to the US in 1911, and what he did, etc. But there was still a big chunk of research to do, because those information, as valuable as they are, were not enough for hold the book. And so this is where I started digging myself and started tracking some people down as well. And this is also where I managed the very first picture I put in the book for the very first chapter. On the left page was given to me by oh, sorry, I just need to get his name right. I don't want to
No, don't want to fit. As
Robert,
I told you before the podcast, that's the same thing I had in mind as well.
So it was Robert Greenberg. So it was is great the great grandnephew or the grandnephew of Coleco founder, and I managed to find him on Facebook because he still has the company. He still has the company of his grandfather, even though it's not a moving company anymore. It's an antique store company, but it's still in the same area in Connecticut. So I told him I was working on the book, and he told me, "Hey, don't worry, I have some pictures if you want." So he provided me with this one, and I'm still very grateful for that. And so this was really more about finding the people who worked at the company or who knew about the company at the time for the research, because the whether it's toys or information on of the company after the beginning, so really the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, which is a period that started being documented either on the internet or elsewhere. But the biggest challenge here was on the first 20 years. Let's put it in that way. Between 1932 and the 50s,
I can imagine so.
It was challenging. Yeah.
I want to ask real quick, does he still retain the rights to the Coleco? I mean, obviously Coleco is not the company that it was once. In fact, for all intents and purposes, it is not that company anymore. Does he still retain all the rights to all the properties as far as it's concerned? Has some of it been sold off? For instance, obviously the ColecoVision titles, and then just as important, or possibly as important, since now people are going into pop culture a little bit more heavy these days, the Cabbage Patch Kids.
So the rights, so Coleco rights now are being held by a Chicago company called River West Brand, and which Chris Cardillo is a part of. So Chris Cardillo is the man who really helped me also with the book. This is with him that I discussed to be able to call the book Coleco the official book. So to be an official product for the brand. So the official, really the official history of the company. And they really also helped me with some English proofreading, because as you can hear, English is not my mother tongue, so I'm still struggling a bit with it.
No problem. You're doing fine.
Thank you. And so yeah, the brand still exists, but the company does not. So it's a little bit complicated, but this is how it works with brands. So if the company goes under, which was Coleco's case in 1989, you can still get the rights to the brand and then just license this brand to some other people. So like me included for the book, for example. But you can do that for other toys or any other project actually.
In many ways, it's similar to Atari, because the Atari, the actual company that it once was, is no longer. It still tries to to rear its ugly head sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But
with other companies, but the rights and the properties, there are still companies that still want it, still have, still obviously.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you're talking about a specific game, yeah, this is where it becomes blurry, and it's the same for the whole video game industry.
Yes.
So just as an example, so Jean-François Dupuis is also the founder of Collector Vision. So they create games for the ColecoVision, but not only. They're also an independent game developer now. And recently, I think it was last year, they wanted to make a game. A Rick Dangerous game, so like a kind of a sequel or a port on another system, and they didn't manage to do it because the company still owns the brand, even though we haven't seen a Rick Dangerous game in ages. But this is what surprised me the most, is that it's Square Enix that owns the right to Rick Dangerous. So like the people who make Final Fantasy or Deus Ex, they also have the right to an obscure game. So it was a popular game in the 80s, but right now it's an obscure game, and they didn't want to make like a millions with the game, but just because they wanted to use the name, they couldn't, because it's their brand and they want to protect it. Just just in case they want to do something with it. So
And you'll find
and
that I've come to know that yeah, as well, that there's that a lot of these large entities have a lot of these
mhm,
dormant
exactly.
titles that people would love to see reimagined and may never see the light of day just because of that, just because it's not a fiscal decision, even though there are other parties, like you said,
Hmm.
like your co-author, that actually has the impetus to do that. So very
Hmm.
fascinating indeed. I did want to ask you real quick your thoughts on, as far as when you were going through those early years, before, at I guess the height you would say would be ColecoVision and whatnot, and
Hmm.
most people's mind, as far as that, and the insane Cabbage Patch Kids
Hmm.
era, which I lived through as well, again dating my
Hmm.
age. What were some of the fascinating parts for you, and what are some of the parts that maybe you looked at it and you had to look at it again because it was so wild that maybe you wouldn't associate Coleco with being involved with that type of product, because like I said
Hmm.
before, that was some of the most fascinating parts of this book for me. And again, the book is available now on colecobook.com. If you're able to go ahead and get it, you just order it right away because it is a great read. But that was some of the most fascinating points of the book myself, is that I did not know Coleco did some of the things that they did.
Hmm. Yeah, so I hear you, and I think you refer to the swimming pool business, for example. So
Possibly.
it was for me, it was something fascinating because yeah, as I told you, the when I first started the project, I knew about Coleco through the ColecoVision, and and only about that. And then digging about the project, I started noticing that they were doing swimming pools and then snowmobiles, and that they were also in Montreal, so where I live now. And so all that stuff that became so began to pile up, and so it was very fascinating for me to learn all
All
that.
those
And
contradicting things,
yeah,
correct?
exactly. Yeah, because first it's a leather company. So the founder was a supplier for shoemakers. So that's the thing. And then his son just realized that the toy business is becoming big. So they started doing leather toys, leather craft kits, and all that stuff. And then they discovered the plastic, so they what they could do with really rigid plastic toys, and so toys that you could not break easily, and that were really finished products when you got it, because with the leather ones you had to build it yourself, so it was a toy, but you had a pretty big time building the toy before playing with it.
And the
And
tabletop games, that was they were
and
really
yeah, the
big into that.
tabletop, the sports tabletop games, yeah, they were really big on in that too. And but yeah, for me, the most surprising thing, I think it would be the swimming pools and the snowmobiles, because it was something I really didn't expect to see Coleco in. So I was completely, it completely blew my mind.
It as it did to myself as well. And if you want more on that, check that out in the Coleco, the official book that's available today, that you can buy right now on colecobook.com. When I read that, that just blew my mind. And there's actually some more things in there that are very interesting reading indeed. What I gather was before their heights of success, or if you say heights of success, maybe heights of failure, one way to look at it as far as it's concerned, with the ColecoVision and also Cabbage Patch Kids. It seemed to me like they were throwing, almost like some companies say, like, let's take Sony. Sony throws a lot of darts at a
Hmm.
lot of projects, and whatever sticks is what they're going to go with.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, they've got PlayStation 4 has done gangbusters past few years, but yet not everything associated with the PlayStation name that they've introduced has done. And once they don't see it successful, they have a tendency to toss aside.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I see a lot of similarities in what Coleco used to do, like you said, swimming pools, snowmobiles, and a whole bunch of other things that, like I said, I did not connect the dots with Coleco, but it just seemed like their attempt to go ahead and try and see if they can get something that would stick with audiences. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's they were a business before everything else. They were their goal was to make money, and this was what in their DNA, first of all. So it was not it the the more the company went into its history, and the more it grew, the less it became very passionate about what it was doing. So of course we have the result with some very passionate products, because it was made by passionate people. But this is also what I noted during my research and while writing the book, is that the the founder of the company and the son of the founders of the company, who took back the who took over the company when Maurice Greenberg retired in 1976. They just wanted to make the most money as possible. So it's which is really not a good way for a company to go with its business. But
Could you say in some ways, my apologies, could you say in some ways that they tried to go ahead and see themselves at a level that maybe they were not prepared to be at, or maybe they were not fully prepared for? They were, because from what I gather and what I've seen and what I've known through my life, that Coleco was a company that did well when it stayed
mhm,
within its means. When it went outside beyond its means, it that's obviously what could have possibly been the demise for the company. In their because I'm sure, and in some airways they thought of themselves in comparison, heavy comparison to, you know, the Matchboxes, the Mattels,
mhm,
the
exactly. Yeah.
actually the even the Ataris of the day, as far as it's concerned. Am I wrong in that statement, or?
No, no, no. But it's just also that we have to keep in mind that Coleco, like Mattel, was on the East Coast. So like Mattel and Hasbro as well. So it was really the main competitors for Coleco were really the other big toy companies like Mattel and Hasbro, who ironically ended up buying 90% of the company when it went under. So of the assets of the company. So and everything that was in the Silicon Valley. So because at the time there wasn't any internet, so there wasn't any social network as well. So there wasn't any really communication between the two coasts, especially for competing companies. So
Mhm.
of course they knew what was going on in the Silicon Valley, so in Sunnyvale where Atari was, and that they were making the Pong arcade games, the Pong home console as well, that led to the creation of the Telstar for Coleco. And so afterwards the Atari 2600 that paved the way for the creation of the ColecoVision. But really that was it. They didn't really know about much more than that. They knew about of course the reception of the console, so they knew that it was selling very well. So this is what made them want to go in that direction as well. Um, but yeah, they really wanted to compete with Mattel also, that ended up releasing a video game console as well, the Intellivision, that almost was a Coleco console. So if you check the book, you will know why the Intellivision almost was a Coleco console, and why the controller is also very similar to the ColecoVision one.
And that's what I wanted to allude to as well,
Hmm.
because whereas I had the Pong and I had the Intellivision, obviously, I mean, Pong and the ColecoVision, I had a friend that had the Intellivision, and playing both, even though the graphics were far superior on the ColecoVision, the actual interface and actual controlling schemes and things of that nature were very, very similar
Hmm.
indeed.
Hmm.
And if you're not as familiar with gaming history, people have a tendency to blend the Intellivision and the ColecoVision together in one lump.
Exactly, yeah, because the name is almost the same, and this is why this is why we managed to mix them up. And it was my case also, very early on when I really got interested in video game history. I was like so Intellivision, ColecoVision, did the Intellivision come first and the ColecoVision second from the same company? So I was really not aware of any of the background of the companies that were behind those machines. And but yeah, this is what also is fascinating. So to discover that there are some ramifications behind all that, and that led to the creation of a console and not another. So for me, it was also a very great surprise to learn all that stuff from the ColecoVision. And this is also why I really wanted to focus on the ColecoVision. It's because when we say Coleco, this is what we remember, and I really wanted to push on those memories for the people. But yeah, as you told, it's not a book only on the ColecoVision. It's really the whole company that it
Absolutely.
described.
Absolutely. And that's, also as well, I wanted to commend you as far as your research on the Telstar, which,
Mm-hmm.
as noted again, just like the ColecoVision and Intellivision get blended together and also get passed up because of the dominance of the 2600, and
Mm-hmm.
how the ColecoVision and Intellivision came at a time where, unfortunately, due to the ET issue with Atari, that the
Mm-hmm.
video game industry also hit a major downswing until the Nintendo Entertainment System. But the Telstar is very underrated as far as what it brought to the industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
Your fascinating look into the book as far as some of the early pioneers of gaming and how they associated themselves with Coleco are also outlined in the book. I will save that for the book. So that's some good reading indeed. If people want to find out how that is and who that is with,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know, have you got a chance to play the ColecoVision at length? And what are your favorite games? Because I can tell you mine, and the reason why I will always be endeared to the ColecoVision is because my favorite games on there were Zaxxon, and especially
Nice.
probably
Yeah.
the best representation of Donkey Kong Jr. That I had
Okay.
seen at that time, because it was the colors and as far as the concern and the actual look, was the closest I had seen to an actual arcade game at the time of any game, in my opinion, at that time. Obviously, that's changed now, but
Yeah, of course.
it looks so much. At that time, I was just so overwhelmed at how good it looked compared to its arcade brother, as far as it's concerned. But your thoughts on handling the ColecoVision, because there is reasons why it did not last as a console, but there are also charms on why it's so special to your heart. So tell us, your thoughts when you actually finally got your hands on one of them.
So it was very difficult because I was really not used with the controller, because it's a joystick, a
You're
very
gonna,
rigid
you're gonna say
one.
that.
Yeah, yeah, and but it's easy, you take the controller in your left hand, the joystick in your right hand, you have the fire button for your thumb and your index, and there you go. So you're all set just in a few seconds. And so this is what I really love with the console, like the immediacy of gameplay. So you turn on your console, so you have to wait 12 seconds between for the loading screen, the blue loading screen,
Yes.
and afterwards you're just set. And then my favorite game, I would say it's Donkey Kong, the first one, because
The
when I
packet game.
learned that it was the very first adaptation of this arcade hit, I just became really interested in it, and it plays very very well
It
still
does. It
now.
does.
So I was completely surprised by how it stood the test of time. So but another game that I really like is Bump and Jump, or It's this one, yeah.
Yes.
It's a so it's a racing game, and so as the name implies, you have some jumps sometimes, and it's really funny how they manage to do the zoom effect on the car, so it's getting bigger, and then when it lands, it's getting smaller as it was just before it jumped. So it's a very cool game. You have a very there is a very cool library of games on this console. It's really a shame
I
that
noticed
there
that.
wasn't more. So.
Exactly, and I was fascinated to find out when I was looking through the entire library that there was actually a Star Wars and Star Trek entity for
Exactly.
out
Hmm.
there, as far as is concerned. So that was fascinating reading indeed. Um, the ColecoVision, as far as is concerned, for me, the controller was always the issue. The stability of the actual unit itself. I think the number buttons, which was that shared with the Intellivision as far as is concerned, the
Hmm.
numeric
Hmm.
keypad, but the actual controller itself was not the most sturdy.
Yeah,
Because I went
yeah.
through a couple of them,
Hmm.
to say the least. But I do have fond memories of that. Was the Atom to you, as far as something, the Atom was the computer
Hmm.
add-on that came later on, for those of you out there that are not familiar with the Atom? But was the Atom something that they should have tried? Was it something that maybe was something that, looking back in hindsight, maybe something that they possibly should have avoided?
The the fact that they try to go in the computer business is not bad in itself because it was a good move. They did the same with the ColecoVision because they really came in late. So like the Atari 2600 was released in 1977 and the ColecoVision in 1982. So and the Intellivision in 1979. So they really came in late in comparison to all the other manufacturers, and so there is a reason also for that. It's because they really wanted to put on the market the best product that there was at the time, and for them they were driven by the arcade games, and they wanted to bring the experience at home and not part of, not part of the experience, so like with a lesser graphics, etc., but really the whole experience with some some levels that were not present on the home version because for obvious reason actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so and they managed to pull that off, so it was a great experience for them, and they would try to repeat that with the computers because in the 80s, in the early 80s, we're in the eve of the personal computer revolution that would be brought by Apple and the Macintosh, which was released in 1984. And before that, there was some computers from Commodore, so the
Know that
VIC-20
well.
and the Commodore 64, and there was, and in Europe there was some other with the BBC Micro, the Spectrum from Sinclair,
And
and
even the IBM PCs at that time.
yeah. It was coming, so it was this whole revolution that was preparing, and they wanted to be part of it. So this is what I said. This is what I meant when I said that they were in many industries and sometimes too many, and they went really too fast sometimes,
Spread
and
themselves thin, or so to speak.
yeah, exactly. Because they were in so many industries that this is what led to their demise eventually. So they wanted to try this computer field. They knew that they could bring something. They could bring another value, like they bring like they brought the ColecoVision to the customers 1 year before. But the thing is that what in the, what is present in the DNA of Coleco is that they want to offer the best product at the most affordable price. And if this is something you can do with toys, with plastic toys, electronic games, and video games, they learn that this is not something you can do with computers because it's really different. And so for them, they choose to offer a different experience. So not only a computer, but with the Atom. When you bought the Atom, you had so the computer and the keyboard, which were two separate units. It was not very um, frequent at the time. It was one of the first time it was done. And you had also a printer, because they really they wanted to target the high schooler, the college freshman, and so this is why they really wanted people to use the computer to play, but also to work. And this was something completely new at the time. And so they tried, but they went too fast, and so the computer was not tested enough, and this led to many issues. So it was cheaper than the competition, but on the other hand, they got so many returns that they chose to just cut everything electronic, and yeah, to cut everything electronic in 1985. So 1 year and a half after launching the computer, so it was not a good experience for them. Yeah.
And I remember seeing it on the store shelves as far as it's concerned. Almost intimidated by it as an add-on because it was
Yeah, because it's huge.
Yes,
it's so big.
It was huge. That was probably was the key. I mean, I was a teenager at the time, and seeing that as an add-on, it was just, you know, bigger than the ColecoVision itself.
Of course, yeah.
And it was, that alone just intimidated me. Even though a few years later I would get the Amiga 2000, but that's another story. There were some great interviews, and I also want to make sure that they're noted as far as and a great reason why people should read Coleco, the official book. What were some of the most fascinating parts of interviews, or was there one interview in particular that you enjoyed that really stands out to you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I really love them all. It was really a tremendous experience to get to speak, to get to find some people who work at Coleco, because yeah, as I told before, so a book on Atari, and the people who work at Atari, we know all of them. The people that work in Nintendo, we know almost all of them as well. They are quite celebrities now. But for Coleco, this is also what led me to this project. Like I wanted to spread the love for Coleco, for everyone else to see, and I really wanted to make this book about the people as well, but the people who worked at the company. So not just me writing about the history of the company, but also through the voices of the people who actually work there. And I was very lucky, so I managed to find some people who work directly there, or also some like Lorne Lanning, who really accepted to do the forward for me for this book, whose father worked at Coleco, so he didn't work himself over there, but his father did. And
said some very kind words about his experience with the ColecoVision as well.
Yeah. His forward is amazing. It's something very, very funny. It's really cool. But yeah, if I would draw one interview among all of them, I would say that Janelle Jacques was the person who was really who I spent the most time with on Skype. So she was the director of game design in the advanced research and development. So the video game team of Coleco. And she told me amazing stories. So, and I was really sad that I to cut it down to be able to fit it in the book, because my first edit for this interview that lasted for 2 hours on Skype, it was like 30 pages, just one interview. So I knew that I couldn't put just 30 pages for one interview in the book. So I trimmed it, but I was really sad because all the information is so valuable. But so I put the most essential bit in the book. And yeah, she told me an amazing story, because she was really involved in so many projects at Coleco. So she was involved in the ColecoVision. She was involved in the Atom. She was involved in accessories for the ColecoVision. So it was completely amazing. Like I spent so much good time with some people. I even managed to find one manager of a company here in Montreal, of a factory that was here. I met him actually 2 weeks ago to give him a copy of the book. He was very, very happy. It was very cool to see him again. And I also met with Michael Price, who was also a game designer at Coleco, when I was in Arizona last month for a Game On Expo. So I got to meet some of them. I got to speak with some of them on over Skype, and for me, this is why I love this job. That you get in touch with some people that created the video game history, and it's fascinating for me to hear their story, to hear their anecdotes, what they did, how it was different from now, and how few of them also stayed in the video game industry. So General Jacques is one of the few that stayed in the video game industry. All the other ones worked in other industries afterwards because they were laid off. Actually, most of them were laid off for the video game business. I mean, they were laid off in 1985, just as they came back from their Christmas vacation. So
That's bad.
it's understandable that you want to change scenery and don't have to do anything with the video game afterwards. So.
That's but unfortunately that was a byproduct of that period, because that's when the video game industry was really on a downturn and would not see, at least from a North American standpoint, until maybe a couple years later, like I said, with the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Exactly.
But I cannot let you go unless I ask this question, because it is a part of our history of the 80s. It's a part of our pop culture. And that's the craze of the Cabbage Patch Kids, which was maybe the final stroke of genius for Coleco, as far as from what I'm able to ascertain. Their last big hurrah as a company. Tell me your thoughts on the craze itself, because I lived through it. It was on the nightly news. People fighting, literally.
The riots.
The riots, the fighting, the injuries, the people dying over it, people robbing each other over them. They would be on stacks before the stores would open, and then immediately people would rush in, like it was the old days from Black Friday, as far as it's concerned. Your thoughts on when you were investigating the Cabbage Patch Kids craze, and if you were able to talk to some people about it, what were your thoughts, when you were interviewing them, as far as their memories of it? Because, like, for me, like I said, I saw this and was just blown away that these dolls could do so much for these people, and that people were willing to be so crazy, as far as it's concerned, to do so many outrageous things in order to get their hands on them.
So the thing is with the Cabbage Patch Kids is that, so it was not created by Coleco. It was created by someone else. There is actually a bit of a controversy over the creation of the dolls. But anyway, the man who had the rights for the Cabbage Patch Kids, it was called Little People before that. I don't remember his name.
But it's in the book, correct?
Yeah. It's he has a cowboy hat. It comes from Georgia. Well,
I remember scanning that over too myself. I remember the as far as you mentioned, the cowboy hat and whatnot.
His name was Xavier Roberts.
Okay.
Xavier Roberts. So Xavier Roberts from Georgia, created the Cabbage Patch Kids, and he went to see all the toy manufacturers in the country, and they all said no except Coleco. Coleco really saw the potential of those dolls, but every time I mentioned it to any of the people who work in the video game division of Coleco, they didn't expect at all this craze that happened with the Cabbage Patch Kids, because they all told me that I've never seen such an ugly doll. So
there's a layer of resentment from the video game department that in some ways that this took off like it did.
No, I'm not sure it's resentment. It's just like when you see the doll for the first time, it's not like a
It's not a
plastic doll.
looker.
Yeah, it's not a plastic doll like Barbie, and it's not like a beautiful woman with like blonde hair and like a beautiful dress on and stuff. So no, it's just a baby,
Big chubby
a soft,
cheeks,
yeah,
and yeah.
yeah, chubby cheeks, a soft one also. So it's really different from what they were used to. So but the fact that you didn't buy the doll, you adopted it, and it came with adoption papers and everything. So you had a really different experience with the Cabbage Patch Kids than a Barbie doll. And
Similar to
so
what the Build-A-Bear concept does today.
yeah, yeah, and so as Coleco is a toy company first, they really wanted to go through with it. The toys the dolls were manufactured all over the world. So they were manufactured in Europe, in Hong Kong, in the US, in Canada, also in Montreal. There was a factory manufacturing some Cabbage Patch Kids, and yeah, it went big. It was unexpected also for them, but they made one crucial mistake. They thought that they had the next Barbie, so they thought that this craze would last for many years, and unfortunately, it was just for one Christmas,
It
and
was.
afterwards, it was gone for North America. Because if you check the interviews, you will see that the Cabbage Patch Kids are still big elsewhere in the world, but not in North America anymore.
Now,
And
now they're more of collector's items per se.
exactly, exactly, yeah. And so they didn't expect the craze, so they manufacture millions of them, and they didn't expect for it to go away that fast. So they were stuck with millions of dolls, and that they had to destroy or to give away or to put that in clearance. And so it was it, yeah. All in all, it was not a good experience, neither for this one. Because they thought they had something really really big, and they did, but just for 1 year. So it didn't last as long as they expected. So.
But once the bill came out, as far as it's concerned, with all that excess inventory, might well, you know, there are thoughts that you have in there as far as where it led to, as far as the company is concerned. Obviously, that could be one leading factor. There are many other factors as well, because you can't just put it on the onus on one specific cause. And the book, I think, details that as far as it's concerned. But let's say one last question before you go.
Sure.
If you had been the head of Coleco at that time, what
Wow.
if there and you had one choice to make, what would that have been as far as it's concerned during the 80s, at the height, as far as it's concerned? One change you would like to have made.
Um, I would have stayed with the Coleco vision, because what I learned and what I discovered writing the book is that they were in because Eric Bromley was hired from Bully Midway, so from the arcade part of the video game business. He knew a lot of people. He knew like all the heads of the arcade business, and this is why Coleco managed to have some really good arcade titles, arcade ports on the console, on the ColecoVision. And they could have made history with a successor of the ColecoVision.
So they should have
Because
stuck to it more, correct?
yeah, this is what I would have done, because they had so many opportunities. They also had the right structure and the right hierarchy to do that, because Coleco was the first company to use to have different position for a different part of a game. So they had artists, they had game designers, and they had programmers, and also sound designers,
It wasn't
which
one
was
person or two individuals doing a myriad of things.
exactly, yeah. It was not because this is what led to the crash with the ET games you mentioned. So it was one man for 5 weeks. So how can one man for 5 weeks do an incredible game, even if it used an incredible license such as ET? So Coleco um, Coleco managed to to understand that very quickly, and to have the good structure to do it. But because of the ADAM, they stopped the production of all ColecoVision items to focus on the ADAM computer. And for me, this was their worst decision, the worst business decision, because they also knew Nintendo, because they had the Donkey Kong license for the home consoles. And they there even have some talks about Coleco and Nintendo partnering to create another console. So sometimes, yeah, I imagine what it would have been, so to have Coleco and Nintendo partnering to do an incredible machine with so all the American license that Coleco could have obtained, and all the Japanese license that Nintendo could have obtained in its own right, and it would have been something completely different. But they didn't manage to find to understand each other on this particular thing. So Coleco just went its way to create the ADAM, and Nintendo went on to create the Famicom and the NES, and the rest is history. So.
Indeed, it is. But that would have been an interesting marriage, indeed. Just understanding that part, and that and so much more is detailed and outlined in Coleco, the official book. It's available at colecobook.com. It's right there for you folks, but it's also as well for people listening out there on our Game Source and Pop Culture Cosmos radio shows and whatnot. It is colecobook.com. I'm telling you what, it's a great read. Highly, highly recommend it. Just page turner from beginning to end. It details one of the great toy companies of the last century. And I just, Antoine, you have my personal compliments as far as is concerned.
Thank you
on
very
the
much.
actual book itself. I wish you much success.
Thank you.
As far as for that is concerned, and obviously all your rest of your career as well. You're welcome back with us anytime you want. Again, this is Antoine Clerc Renaud, the author of Coleco, the official book. I hope you get a chance to talk with us again. We'd love to talk more Coleco,
Sure, no
80s
problem.
history
Anytime.
on video game, your 90s history as well. And obviously you're a gamer true and true,
Yes.
which
Yeah,
we
yeah,
are as
I am.
well. Any thoughts on what you're looking forward to this fall on playing while I have you here?
Whoa, but to be completely honest with you, I don't have any of the more recent consoles.
Really? Okay. Just
Yeah, I
all
don't.
retro for you. No worries.
Yeah,
No
it's
worries.
really retro for me, and I don't have much time to play either. So because during research it takes a lot of time, and then you have to when you have to put a book together, it's even more time. So, but yeah, but as a Final Fantasy big fan, I'm really curious about Final Fantasy 15. Of course, I really want to know how it will hold up.
I will tell you this: it was recently announced that Final Fantasy 15, the PlayStation Slim bundle, will be coming very
Exactly.
soon. So you may have your eyes on that.
Yeah, because I don't have a PS4 yet, so maybe, yeah, I will see that. And yeah, I'm also looking forward the all the big announcements, all the big because I'm still following the video game industry and all the new games and stuff, even though I don't have time to play them, but I'm still curious and curious to see where the video game industry is going. So with the VR and everything, so I'm still following just for from afar since right now, but maybe sometime when I will be done with all my project, I will have time to dive in again.
Well, I hope you do indeed, because obviously, as you and I have come to know, video games are a great portion of this world as far as is concerned. It's something good that's been created out of our society, and just something that many gamers out there, like you and like me, have had more than great experiences with. And once again, it is Coleco, the official book, from colecobook.com. You just want to check it out. You can buy the book right there. You just go ahead, go for it. It's a great read. I highly recommend it. If you want to read my review, just to make sure, it's on the nuherald.com and yourgamesource.com. But just you know, go to it. Go to colecobook.com and buy that book, because it's a great read indeed. And Antoine, once again, it's been a pleasure having you on. You're
Thank you,
always welcome
Gerald. You're
back.
welcome. Yeah.
As far as any of your other projects, or if you get a chance, you want to just talk games, you're always welcome as well.
Sure. Sure.
And like I said, we appreciate you having you on the show, from Game Source and also Pop Culture Cosmos. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, for all the people listening, continue to learn gaming history. We need to preserve it. This is my main mission right now. I'm really focusing on saving this history and preserving this history and telling it through more books. So just continue to support all the video game history writers out there.
And indeed, absolutely. Once again, it's Coleco, the official book, at colecobook.com. The author, Antoine Clerc Renaud, has been our guest. It's been a pleasure. My name is
Pleasure's all
Gerald
mine.
Glassford. Hey, oh, absolutely. My name is Gerald Glassford from Game Source and Pop Culture Cosmos. Want to thank you for your time, Antoine, and thank everybody out there for watching and listening. Appreciate it so much. And here's hoping you have yourselves a great day.